All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining today for the second session in our Design for Success series. This is Digital Transformation in Practice. We're going to be in conversation with Evelyn Lee and Dave Lemont. The discussion is going to cover some management within architecture firms, how to capture knowledge of industry experts, training up the next generation of architects, and how to enable knowledge sharing as technology takes over tasks at architecture firms. Before we get started with today's discussion, I want to invite my colleague, Helen. Helen is our Director of Architectural Experience here at Acelab. She's going to give a quick little intro about how to use Acelab for your building product research. We'll put out a quick poll if anybody wants to sign up for a session to learn some more, and then we'll go ahead and get started with today's discussion. All right, Helen, take it away.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know. Looks like still loading. Now should be sharing. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen, and I am, as Bo said, the Director of Architect Experience here. My job is to make sure you have a great experience using the website. So instead of giving you all a full overview in this little snippet of time, I want to talk to y'all a little bit with a case study here as an example of what will happen if you use our live chat. So we had a firm reach out to us. They were working on kind of an immediate pressing need to find some aluminum windows, and they needed to meet a certain solar heat gain coefficient. So they went through our product search, but they also, due to the immediacy of that, they were having their mechanical engineer working on it right then and there, reached out on the live chat. And what happens when you do that is our team of experts is able to put together some recommendations for you, like you see here. We can leave comments, and as you scroll on down, this allowed this individual at this firm to have all that information side by side across these 4 options that would meet the solar heat gain coefficient that she needed for this project. So I'll slowly scroll so you can see how awesome Acelab's comparison is here for showing all this different information across product types. This is one example of how to use Acelab. This will then be saved to this individual's project, and the whole team can then access it. If y'all are interested in learning a bit more about how to use Acelab to create these awesome comparisons, feel free to jump onto a 15-minute training session with me. And also, if y'all at any point need to find something you can't find or you have an immediate need, please don't hesitate to reach out on that live chat, and our team will help out and we can put together a recommendation like this for you. All right, I will pass it back over.
All right, thanks, Helen. I'm going to give a quick little introduction about our speakers today, and then I'll pass it over to them to get started with today's discussion. So starting off with Dave Lemont. We are super lucky to work really closely with Dave Lemont at Acelab. He's an accomplished business leader, a go-to-market strategist, and an advisor with 30 years of experience in high-tech startup companies. He has extensive experience in SaaS business applications with keen expertise in construction tech. He's helped 5 companies to successfully exit to high-tech leaders such as Autodesk, Trimble, HP, and Oracle. All right, and then we also have Evelyn Lee here today with us. Evelyn has been on the client side for over a decade and has spent the last 5 years in tech, helping create exceptional employee experiences while growing the business. She's a startup advisor and fractional COO to small and medium-sized business firms, and she's also the founder of Practice of Architecture and the host of the podcast Practice Disrupted, which is really awesome. So if you want to get some more information after today's webinar, definitely go check out that podcast. All right, Dave and Evelyn, thank you so much for joining today. Whenever you're ready, feel free to get started with today's discussion.
Thanks, Bo.
Thanks, Bo. So first of all, thank you all for joining us today. This is really meant to be a conversation. I have my message board open, so feel free to raise your hand, interact. I have also the Q&A, but if you want to use the chat, Bo, let's make sure that's turned on this time so everyone can use the chat if they're interested, and we'll jump into the conversation. So today is really about digital transformation. And before we go deep into digital transformation, Dave, you have a long history of working both inside and outside of the AEC. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background, elaborating on what Bo just gave in your bio?
Great. Well, Evelyn, it's good to see you again. I'm anxious to talk to everyone today. So, as Bo alluded, I've been a CEO 5 different times running high-tech companies of all different types, from accounting software to logistics software to foreign currency trading software. But I'm probably best known for being the former CEO of Revit. It was probably the most exciting time of my career. I ran that company and ultimately sold it to Autodesk and spent a year at Autodesk as well, helping to cultivate that business. I love working with small teams. It's amazing what a small group of passionate people can accomplish. I'm never not amazed and inspired by that. But the world of architecture is sort of one of my main loves. And I mean, it's where we live, it's where we learn, it's where we work. You know, that's what architecture does for us. I'm also a photographer, so that artistic side of me, I guess, loves that combination of art and engineering and architecture as well. So learned a lot about the world of architecture, although I'm not an architect, but have worked with architects all around the world, and I think I've gained some interesting insights.
Great. You know, and as somebody who transcends both the world of architecture and tech, I have to say that I learned so much from those individuals outside of traditional practice who brings their expertise into the field. So thank you, Dave, for continuing to take AEC and especially architects under your wing. We are going to dive deep into digital transformation, and I think a lot of people have different definitions of what digital transformation is. So could you how would you define digital transformation in your own words?
Well, I think digital transformation, whether it's an architectural firm or a manufacturing firm or a home builder or whatever type of company is, it comes down to three topics for me. One is automation, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. The second is single source of truth. That means having digital information in one central location that everyone can access and leverage. And the third is collaborating. So let's go back to the first one, which is automation. And this is particularly true for an architecture firm. I feel that where the focus is on the design and the client, but so many of the processes of a firm are done the same way for a long period of time, and there are automation tools that can automate those manual processes now, and quite frankly, give time back to the architectural firm to do what they love. And so the ability to find manual processes and automate them, that's one key element. The second is to get all the data that people need to be productive in a firm and get it in one central location and be able to evolve that data so that people can share it and take advantage of the knowledge that the firm has, without having to always go ask the one or two people in the firm that seem to have it in their heads. And then to be able to use that information and collaborate. So people can share that information and understand it and do their jobs better because they can quickly access it and even add to that information. So that, automation, single source of truth, collaboration, that's what digital transformation means to me.
And we would be remiss to say that Acelab provides a little bit of all of that and is free for architects if you are joining us and if you haven't checked it out yet. Dave, we have a question that we'd like to present to all of our attendees. So how engaged is your firm in digital transformation now? So we will give people maybe a few minutes to respond to that. What are you seeing, Dave, in terms of how engaged firms are with digital transformation, and has that evolved over time, especially with the new technologies coming on board these days?
Well, I mean, I was involved in one of the biggest transformations in the world of architecture, which, is, a hallmark of my career. The movement from, running Revit, drove the movement from two-dimensional drafting to three-dimensional parametric building modeling. I think that's a standard today. People, there are thousands and tens of thousands of architects that are working in 3D today, which is an obvious advantage to be able to understand the physical structure, how things interfere with each other, the objects within the structure, to be able to count them efficiently. So I think that's one big area of digital transformation that the architecture industry has really done a good job with. The second I would say is, starting to run the architecture like a business and getting accounting systems and really understanding the profitability of the firm. And the other is, I think, is scheduling, to managing people's times. project management. I think those are three basic areas where firms have really moved forward over the last 10 or 15 years and should be applauded for that.
Great. Yeah, I do think there is some future forward momentum. I think obviously with AI and so many other code tools coming in, I think there's a greater opportunity for firms to engage there as well. Before I answer you the next question, Bo, can we throw up the next question for our audience members, which is, does your firm have any plans to manage digital transformation in the future? And then in the chat box, if our audience is interested, I would love, to expand upon your question a little bit more, or answer the question, what is your biggest roadblock relative to digital transformation? And we might get Dave to help us think through some of how to undo some of those roadblocks. But thank you all for letting me know where you're calling in from. So Dave, my next question to you then is, where are architects really excelling at digital transformation? Where do you see, you talked a little bit about kind of the tools that are in place. Where are architects really grasping onto the opportunity that digital transformation presents?
Well, I think it's in those areas, really. I mean,
Okay.
project management and accounting are the areas I think that, and then three-dimensional design are the areas. I think, though, there are a lot of areas that are not being addressed right now that are huge opportunities for architecture firms to be dramatically more productive. And
that was going to be my next question for you. So, so where do you see those opportunities?
Well, I mean, I'm probably, as the chairman of Acelab, I'm probably a bit biased, but it's probably the reason why I'm so passionate about Acelab. It's materials really matter. And it's the management of materials that I think is the next big opportunity for digital transformation. And let me explain what I mean. There's a whole workflow around, getting the right innovative materials and standard materials you're comfortable with into each project after project. And that goes from research, finding the best possible products, to organizing all the information you have about the history of the way you've used materials in the past in some sort of a standard library for the firm. And then how you plan the use of materials for your next project. Like, what do I need to worry about here? And how can I manage to get the documentation for those done as quickly as possible? The schedules I need, the spec sheets that I need, any cut sheets that I need, and how do I build relationships with manufacturers over around this more effectively, so that my firm doesn't just go with what it used before every time, but it can innovate as well as each project demands that innovation. So I think the problem today is that this whole materials area is just too ad hoc and manual. Information is scattered in a firm. It's in PDFs, it's in spreadsheets, it's in the heads of, the most senior partners in the firm. And that's a real problem, because, how do you do the best job on the next project unless you want everything to funnel through one or two people in your firm? And to be honest with you, though, I have to say, I can't really blame the architect firm for this, because the technology industry, up until very recently, has not done a very good job of automating this workflow and giving a really integrated workspace to the firm. But I'm kind of thrilled to see that that's changing now.
Yeah, so we have a question kind of relative to what you were just talking about from Ursula. And she says that the firm I work in at still uses 2D technology, and we're looking at transitioning to 3D, but we feel it is disruptive to our current workflow. So what is the best way to approach that change?
I think the right way to do that is to pilot it on a project. So in other words, to get a small group of people trained, and then use some consulting help of people that are, because it isn't something you just pick up and do on your own. I think in terms, because you need to think about how you want to model the building if you're going to use 3D parametric modeling for it. And so I'd get some supportive people that have experience doing that, and then put a plan together and how you're going to approach the three-dimensional design of that building and do it on one project. And but you know, all change and improvement is disruptive. In other words, when you move from a approach to a new approach, no matter how productive the new approach is going to be, there is going to be some pain. There's going to be some learning curve. And but if we didn't go through any of that, we would never advance our firms into a better way that can, you know, ultimately create a better design. And a design that we understand better, so that we can understand where the problems are going to lie, so that we can solve them more quickly and more effectively. And you know, that's really what parametric modeling is all about.
Yeah. I really appreciate that standpoint from you know, growth and change takes being uncomfortable. So Ursula, I hope we answered your question. Give us a thumbs up or let us know in the comments. But I think, you know, Dave gave an excellent response relative to how do we prototype these little changes? So have a little group exercise and like take that through it as an exercise and see if they can prototype that change. And if it works, great, then roll it out. And if it doesn't, then it just only affected kind of that little group. But it's a way to prototype and test. I don't know, Dave, if you wanted to piggyback off of that anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right approach. And you know, if you're petrified, then you know, have somebody else work in the other system still, so that you know you've got something to compare it to, because then you may be able to see very clearly, well, it took us this much time. See, you know, the power of 3D is that the edits come dramatically faster. You know, and so, and inevitably things are going to change. The client's going to see things that they didn't see before until they see something, and you're going to wind up changing things, and those changes are going to occur so much faster. But if you compare the two approaches, it might give confidence to the firm for the next project.
Okay, we have another question from Kent, specifically around the specifications process. So do you see anything new on the horizon? And you can bring in Acelab into this, obviously, too, relative to specs and AI and how to support firms through the digital transformation there. And
Yeah,
Kent,
this
if you
is,
want to be more specific, feel free to
I
leave it in the
will,
comments.
and this is really what Acelab is working on. We want to reimagine this whole, you know, research to specification workflow, and that's what we have in our platform today. And it's free, and I encourage everyone on this platform to, you know, get some training sessions from Helen and or get started on your own, because it's really powerful what we're doing. The first thing that's here is an AI-powered visual search capability. And the visual, we've essentially indexed, I don't know, close to 30,000 products around the building envelope today, virtually every product in the building envelope. And we've structured the data by all the key performance attributes and aesthetic attributes that an architect would care about. And then we've built these really powerful visual quizzes that allow the architect to answer a step-by-step set of questions that guide them and filter them down to the right product solution for a project. And the reason why this is so cool is that no architect firm knows everything about every product category. So we've tried to structure our questions to help guide you to get to solve the problems you're trying to optimize for, you know, whether it's cost or it's aesthetics or it's performance or it's sustainability or certifications. All that information is there in every single product, and you're able to find it. And then you can save it and compare it to the technical specifications of other projects, which Helen had showed at the beginning of our discussion today. And then we help you connect directly to a manufacturer on your terms. So we're not telling a manufacturer about your project. You're reaching out to a manufacturer in the platform. We've got the list of reps and locations. We immediately contact them in a digital manner, and they respond to you quickly instead of you like searching nonstop on their website. And you can share your project information if you like with them. And now you're having an advisory conversation with an expert, and you can determine whether it's the right thing for you. And if you don't have the time, we even have experts that'll make those recommendations for you and make those connections and even set up workshops for you with the manufacturers. So that's step one. Step 2 is we've got the ability to store now all of the institutional knowledge about materials in a firm library that's housed inside of Acelab for every single member of your firm to collaborate with you on. And Acelab will actually help you build that library out of our library of products. And then you can add all sorts of other institutional knowledge, pictures that you've got, cut sheets, details, comments from your stakeholders that have learned about how this product performed in other projects. And now you're collecting this historical record of the institutional knowledge of the firm that everybody can share and leverage for the next project and evolve that information. So as you do a visual search and find a more sustainable solution for the type of projects you do, add it to your library and get everyone in the firm to take advantage of that for the next project. And then we help you create sort of the planning for each project that goes on and help you generate schedules and help you create the documentation for those specifications. So, this is evolving every day for us, but, come join us on this journey because we want to make this workflow the key to help you innovate with the best product solutions that you can for every project for your client.
Thank you, Dave, for that. Daniel, I'm hoping that answered your question. Let me know in the chat. But honestly, I think raise your hand if you've ever been guilty of copying and pasting a spec from one project to another, just because it's what the firm always uses. I think one of the great things about Acelab, especially as materials and technologies are evolving within the building, is that they're always on the lookout for what's new, best, and greatest. So just in case that representative hasn't been able to get into your firm for the lunch and learn, for their annual lunch and learn, you're getting more up-to-date information as new products are coming out and can make those comparisons on the fly. So it looks like we covered Daniel's question. I don't see any more questions in chat, but Dave, I have a few more questions for you.
Great.
So, we talk about digital transformation, but looking at the demographics of the firm, there's a lot of knowledge that we're going to see being lost in firms. And these are people that aren't necessarily digital natives. There's kind of this idea of this retirement cliff that's coming up with a lot of the baby boomers retiring. So what's the opportunity there to do a knowledge transfer so we don't make sure we lose all of the knowledge that those individuals have, that we currently go and reach out to them directly to get?
I think this is a really critical issue for the industry right now. Knowledge is power, but not if you hoard it. Not if you're the only person that could take advantage of it, or there's a line out your door to get it while you're working on a project, or if you're about to retire. This is why we have put so much effort now into creating these standard firm libraries for firms, and are even adding more and more features over the next several months to this. Because now we've got a repository where the leaders of the firm can essentially load that information for everyone else to share, and not just load the name of the product, but the why behind it. Because this product may work well in this application, but not so great in that application. Or maybe it's a great product, but the contractor has problems installing it. And so or it's got a long lead time. All that information, who is the rep that I can count on to get good advice? All that information's got to be shared in the same central location for everyone to share. And I think there's a great opportunity for firm leaders to realize the importance of getting this, not shared in, a document here and there or a sticky or in their heads, but into a library of standards that everyone in the firm can take advantage of, so that knowledge is powerful for everyone in the firm.
Right, and I think that, Helen mentioned in the chat, a lot of spec writers actually retiring too. So Craig had a question. Bo, can we unmute Craig so you can ask the question directly to Dave?
Yeah, I just unmuted Craig.
Craig, are you there? Did he just disappear?
Disappeared.
Oh,
Oh,
he says, sorry about that. It looks like it was an accidental hand raise.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll keep asking my questions. Please continue to drop your questions in chat. We've only occupied about a half hour here. So Dave, my question for you, with all of this new technology coming on, there's a big concern, I would say, out of firm leaders about how we train. We covered one end of the spectrum. I'm going to the other end about how we train and mentor the younger individuals coming into the firm, because so much of what they do and manipulate in 3D space, they don't necessarily understand how that goes together physically on the construction site. So, how do we bridge that gap as we move towards more things being digital and understanding the tectonics of constructability even?
Yeah, well, this is a multifaceted question. I think that this whole issue of young people joining firms and what is their role in the firm, I think is an important issue in and of itself. Obviously, in any industry that we all start in, whether it's software development or architecture or manufacturing, we all need to go through mentorship periods to really learn the industry and the ins and outs. To me, the greatest learning for people would be to be on construction sites and see how buildings are really being put together. And the more that young people can experience that in their early times in firms, I think is invaluable to understand, how assemblies really work inside of a building and to see it live. But the other is, some of these other points I'm making, which is to begin to, one of the problems is that the young people are given the work that no one else wants to do in the firm, when they first join. And, and ironically, because the processes in the firm around this are not automated, it's particularly frustrating for this next generation of young architects that are joining. Technology is, sort of like an appendage. It's like the arms and legs of a young student. I mean, everything that they do is based in technology. It's how people grow up now. And then you enter your career and you're not using as much technology as is available. And you're, creating documentation and specs and all these things that are, perhaps could be so well automated so that their brain power, the reason why they went to school, could be harnessed and used. So honestly, I think some of these things that we've been talking about around a firm library, where instead of sending the young person off to, hang around on Google sites and 800 numbers trying to track people down, where institutional knowledge is collected. And then when they do find something innovative in a website like Acelab, they can add it to other people's institutional knowledge. I think that charges up young architects. And honestly, I think there's a risk of a lot of young architects wanting to leave the industry if they don't see their ability to make a more important contribution to the firm earlier. And part of that, by the way, is even bringing technology that they understand into a firm to help people be more productive.
Let me take that last sentence that you said, technology that they understand also to the firm and to be more productive. And we talked a little bit about prototyping, but can you maybe talk about other instances where we could provide the younger individuals the ability to do that? And I say that because, one, I got my master's at SciArc, which we were using computer programs that honestly, some of them probably shouldn't be used in firms, but some of them definitely could. So understanding the difference between those two. But two, I think there's always going to be pushback from the top of, you don't understand enough about what we do to understand how this tool supports our workflow. So how do we really meet in the middle there?
Well, I think people have to bite the bullet and train people and spend time with them explaining. People can't learn things without that. The best way to learn something is to work side by side someone and then be given real tasks to do, not just the most meaningful tasks, but to be given real design tasks and then have someone evaluate that work. And if it's a training exercise, maybe it's not something that'll go directly into the project, but people learn through mentorship and then by doing. And then by sharing that information with other people. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's architecture. I think one of the, I've worked in many different industries. And one of the things I laugh at the most is when I enter a new industry, how people tell me how that industry is different. Well, of course they're different in many ways. But, people learn in very much the same ways. People get educated in very much the same ways. People get mentored and developed in much of the same ways. And leadership has to really put a value on educating people, as opposed to making people pay their dues. I think it's more about, how do I get the most out of someone as soon as possible? How do I get them to be as productive as possible? How do I get them to love what they do as soon as possible? And that's really exposing people and taking some risks with them to give them an opportunity to shine and do something. And I'll say the reverse. It's like, what can we learn from the young people in a firm? So I work in high-tech companies every single day. If I don't keep up with the young people in the firm, I'll be a dinosaur. So we use Slack and Notion and Figma and different HR tools, and because they're more productive, because people can collaborate in an instant with each other in these firms, tools that would be very valuable to every architecture firm. If I refuse to use those tools, no matter how, quote, smart I may be, or what my background is going to be, I'll be left out of the communication avenues of the companies I'm trying to help. And I think architecture firms need to think in this modern way about, how can we all communicate and collaborate in a digital way? Because that saves time. That gets information and the right knowledge to people faster. And that allows people to develop quicker.
I wholly agree. And I actually did a lot of research on this when it comes to onboarding and training, and Gallup had a poll, and I'll have to go back into my research to find exactly what what research that paper that came from, but they essentially said that most people decide within their first 90 days of being on the job, and that's usually the onboarding and the training that they're receiving, whether or not it's the stepping stone in their career, or it's like 75% after the first 90 days decide whether or not this place is a stepping stone in my career, or this is a place that I want to grow my career in. And it's the idea that, like, are you offering them the right environment to grow and foster within immediately, or are you, as we've historically done in architecture firms, throwing them into the deep end? So I have a question for you, Dave, when it comes to doing new things, but also balancing the demands of the client. I think, so many architecture firms are struggling with just making payroll at the end of the month. How do we create this space to try these new things while finishing out and meeting the demands of our client?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is multidimensional. I think part of the problems in making payroll is the inefficiency often of the firm, and that a lot of time is wasted in the firm around tasks that can be automated and efficiencies that can be developed. And it's sort of like, well, like, please don't bother me. I'm in the forest cutting the tree down, with my knife, so I'm too busy to become productive. Because productivity is going to lead to being able to do more innovative things for clients, or have more time to do business development activities. One of the great frustrations I've had, when I ran Revit in trying to market to architects, is helping architects to look at their business on a long-term basis, as opposed to the next project. If you think about the manufacturing industry, because and this is a natural problem. It's not that architects don't want to do this. It's economically, architecture is a project-based business. And if you compare it to, say, manufacturing, where research and development would be done, and you're going to design and build a product that you'll sell thousands of times, then it's easy to see how a manufacturing company can make an investment in the long term. And it's a little bit harder for an architecture firm. But if you believe you're going to be in business for the long haul, then it's your processes really that are what you need to invest in to make yourself productive and effective for clients on a long-term basis. And so I think it's very important for the architecture firm to be proactive about what is my firm going to look like 3 years, 5 years from now? How am I going to be more effective? How am I going to be competitive? If I don't streamline all the things that waste time in my firm, that could be then going to being more creative for my clients or being more effective as a business person. And I just think that people really need to challenge themselves to think in a different way, long term, the way a manufacturing company does.
Okay. I know I've been asking multifaceted questions, and thank you for your multifaceted responses.
Mhm.
We have a very long question from a gentleman. I need to scroll to the top to actually see his name. So Jim is retiring, and he's seeing, like, since the pandemic, obviously the trains left the station. He's using Teams, everything's going to the cloud. He's using BIM. There's no slowing this train down. So his question really becomes, to what end is this changing architecture and the architecture profession? I have my own thoughts on that, but I didn't, his question is, to what end does this continue to evolve? Does this change who we are as architecture and what architecture is?
I think it's going to enter in a wonderful age for architecture, where the tasks that don't necessarily add the value are done automatically for you by the computer. And so, do I really want to make drawings, or do I want to create designs that automatically generate those drawings? Do I really want to write a 3-part spec, or do I want to find the best possible products and have the spec generated automatically once I answer some questions about the context of how the product is going to be used? And yeah, maybe there's something cathartic about drawing those lines or writing that text. But at the end of the day, I don't know that that's what adds the value for the client. I mean, getting the drawings correct and accurate, of course, does. I don't want to minimize the importance of that. But what's important is the content, the thinking, the emotion, the function. If we can take our time and put it there, that's the handwriting on the wall that I see. That's where we're going to be spending our time. And, as a technologist, and a marketing person, that's where I hope we can provide tools that, maybe there's some pain to go through a learning curve for people to see how to use them, but ultimately it's going to return time back to the firm to do the thing you love, to do the thing that adds value to clients.
So Jim, I hope that begins to answer your question. I want to piggyback off of Dave's response and say, for me, all of this digital transformation is really an opportunity to change our business model, and really shift it from all the hours that we spend QCing and doing these little administrative tasks that we don't love to do, to really where our value is at. So I think it makes the architect even more valuable to the process than ever if we can figure out a way to position ourselves as such. So we have another question in from Chad with regards to onboarding new professionals. Does faster development result in better outcomes, or is it that one or more relationship that inspires growth that's most beneficial? How do you form those relationships and foster mentorships on a person-to-person level that complements the technology?
Well, I think relationships are a two-way street. Young people in a firm can learn from a person who really understands how buildings are put together and the thought process of design. And quite frankly, the partners of a firm can learn from young people in terms of what technologies they use every day that make them more productive and communicate more effectively to their peers. And that that we need to be thinking about mentorship finally as a two-way street. What can I learn from the youngest people coming into the firms? You know, I love the attitude that, at least in the companies that I've had a privilege to work in, that there is no hierarchy. Everybody is as good as their last great idea. And if we can learn to listen to everyone and value that idea, it doesn't mean we're going to act on every idea. It doesn't mean every idea is worth acting on. But if we can listen with an open mind and respect everybody's point of view, then I think mentorship can be a two-way street that can really grow a firm and the culture of a firm, much more effectively and much more quickly, quite frankly. Because the young people joining have a lot to offer that other people in the firm may not be aware of. And we certainly know how much the experienced people in the firm can develop the young people in the firm more quickly. But again, I'll say it, the way to learn is by doing something. And we have to be allowed to make mistakes, because the only way to learn is to make mistakes and then have someone coach you, and then we get better.
So I'm going to follow up with what you just mentioned. It's Chad's second part of Chad's question, and Ken and Ace, I see your questions too, so we'll make sure we get those in as well. Isn't drawing a foundational skill to learn to fully understand how to then employ the technology in the field? And what does getting away from drawing as a skill and moving towards technology do? And I have my own answers to that, but I would love to hear your response, Dave.
I have an opinion about this, but I think, I'm not an architect, so I think, Evelyn, your point of view here is going to be relevant, but we're drawing in the tool also. We're representing assemblies in Revit as well. So we're just doing it more efficiently and more accurately, quite frankly. So just because you draw a line on paper, as opposed to using a cursor to draw a line, does not mean that we're not representing your knowledge inside of the building. So I don't think that one is, the only way to learn how a building is put together is through your hand on a pencil. These tools also are creating the structures of the building, quite frankly, with a lot of built-in intelligence about how the pieces interact with one another or interfere with one another, or how many of them there are and what their size is. So I just think we need to not think about it. And there's a place for drawing, there's a place for a sketch. There's a place for, it isn't that everything has to be done on the computer. It's not like one or the other. You can sketch an idea, get a concept of some mass, and then move that into the computer that can be more accurate and more quicker to flesh it out and document it. So we don't need to think about it in absolutes, but we need to think about what's the best tool for the job at the right moment in time.
Yeah, and I think if I were to piggyback off that answer, I would say where I think technology is headed is it's easy to draw a line and then draw a leader and call out what that line is supposed to represent. What technology can do is tell you the line that you indicated is actually not the right fastener that you should be using for the assembly. And then it could give you 5 different alternatives that would then strengthen the assembly or work in a way that you mean for it to work. So much of what I did as a young architect was copying and pasting details and not fully understanding all of the materials that are really being sandwiched together. Or even understanding like the names of the materials, but not understanding what they're bringing to the assembly of the process. The 3D modeling is getting so much more efficient about like literally being able to catalog every single thing that you're putting into the building and how that goes together. There's a lot of learning that can happen there, especially from visual learners. Dave, it looks like you want to talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think that's a perfect point, because one of the things we're trying to do in Acelab, this is where AI can help us. If you're picking a certain type of cladding, we'd like to ask you a question about, what's the context of that? And is sustainability or performance or fire protect, what's important at this moment? And where is the location? Because that may not hold up well in this location, and we could point that out to you. And that's hard for everybody to know. Or by the way, if you select this, don't forget to pick the fasteners or the sealants or the right insulation that goes well with this. And so, that's where technology can really help. And quite frankly, teach someone better how the assembly works than, as you said, Evelyn, copying and pasting something that was tried and true, but perhaps isn't even up to date any longer. And there are better approaches.
Okay, so Kent has an interesting conversation. This could go a lot of different ways. Are architecture schools ever at fault for teaching? I'm assuming, Kent, and you can elaborate this, extrapolating from your question, but from what they are teaching relative to how digital technology is being utilized in firms. Is that a fully formed question for you, Dave? Or do
No,
you want me to take
say
it?
that again. I don't think I quite got.
I think what is our architecture fault is since students are learning a lot of digital technology tools that aren't necessarily in architecture firms or that are being used differently than they are being used at
Right.
architecture firms. Are architecture schools ever at fault for teaching the way they do and not teaching people to be ready for the firm environment?
Well, I think ready for the firm environment's probably the right thing to do with internships and that type of thing. But I don't think we want to teach people not to be efficient and productive and advanced, because the firms may not have caught on yet. I think it's again about how can we bring young people into the firm, and instead of putting them at the bottom of the totem pole, how can we elevate them to use them to help our firms move forward in productivity? I think that's a new way to think about the young people we're bringing into the firm. It doesn't mean we're going to say, hey, you're going to design, you're going to be the lead designer on this next project. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you may be the lead person of the firm figuring out how to put some communication tools or material research tools into the firm that's going to make everyone more productive. So while you're learning, how we think about design here, you're also leading us. We often think about, oh, I'm the leader and you're the follower. Well, I may be the leader on this and you may be the leader on that. And I may be the follower on this and you may be the follower on that. And I think we need to be thinking of all of our people, whether it's an architecture firm or a high-tech software company, as that way, because everyone's got something to bring to the table. And that's how things rise.
Yeah, one of the things I always noted about my onboarding at Slack, and by the way, I sat in my onboarding class were vice presidents who were much higher in rank than me, as well as summer interns when I was getting onboarded. And the message they delivered to all of us is, you made it through our hiring process. There is a reason why you want you here. Your voice matters from day one. Because you might see something that we're doing that we could be doing differently and be doing better. So we welcome your voice day one. I think that question actually harkens back to a bigger conversation around what schools need to teach and what architecture firms should be teaching. Personally, my take on that is that architecture schools are teaching design, and while design might not directly translate into the firm environment, it is the most valuable tool that we have in our tool set. So I think they're doing the right things by teaching what they are doing relative to design and how to design. And architects need to take all of that and help people harness it in a way that's productive to them. So we're going to go on to Ace's question, which is a little bit in line with the same thing, but it really talks about value add and business proposition. So Ace's question is, it's a little confusing, so I might be misinterpreting this, but the outright question is, when technology allows for value adding deliverables, which clients don't realize exist, little less understand, how does an AE team best merge standard design services and technological evangelism? Dave, do you want to jump in? And if not, I have some immediate thoughts.
Why don't you start there?
Yeah, that's fine. So Ace, and Dave, if you want to jump in, feel free to jump in. I think what what we're saying and what I'm saying, or what I previously actually said around the business value, the proposition and the business value that technology brings to our firms is by enabling architecture firms to put the value where the value is best utilized. So right now, if you're paid on a per hour basis, for instance, there is no reason for us to speed up our CD portion of what we do. We want to be paid like it, and actually we are reverse incentivized to speed up how long it takes us to do CDs. But is that the portion where we are adding the most value to the client? If CDs could then be all automated and we could spend more time on DDs and SDs and implementation of those ideas with the client, then we are realigning where we are most valued in the design process to our deliverables. At least that's my interpretation of where this was headed. But Ace, if I'm completely off to left field, please let me know. But I don't know, Dave, if you wanted to piggyback off of
I think more time needs to be done communicating with the client. You know, one of the things that we're excited about in Acelab that architects are starting to do is when we create a comparison, well, the architect creates a comparison of 3 products, you know, let's get a Zoom meeting with the client and discuss the pros and cons of this. Well, this is a little bit more expensive, but it's going to have greater sustainability and it's going to have greater performance. But here's a mid alternative. You know, use these digital tools as a way to collaborate with the contractor, with the trades, with your client, with the developer, and get more buy-in to what you're doing and get the value of everyone's idea so there's a better outcome for the project. So I think that, you know, like you said, that's a better hour to be charging the client than documentation, tedious documentation work that quite frankly, the computer ought to be able to do and is going to do automatically over time. We'll be generating specs automatically in Acelab, you know, over the course of the next year, you know, and we'll be doing it accurately. And yeah, you'll check them, but that'll be a few minutes as opposed to all the time it may take to, you know, write all the tedium or hire someone for all that tedium. And it doesn't mean it's not important. It's important. But it's the thinking behind it that's important. And that's where we want to put the effort.
Great. We have a really good question from Greg. Is Acelab focused first on enterprise solutions? And Greg, I'm just happy that you know the difference between enterprise solutions and small firms, or are they equally focused on small firms? He's interested in whether the technology will succeed in enabling small firms to do much more.
To be honest with you, I think the largest groups of firms using the product today are small to mid-sized firms. Firms that, you know, although we have literally hundreds of people from HOK and Gensler and AECOM and in the platform getting value today, we do have lots and lots of small to mid-sized firms from single practitioners up to 50 to 75 people in the firm getting lots of value. And one of the big reasons is that a bigger firm, you know, has more resource to devote to certain tasks like specification development or building a firm library, and the small and medium-sized firm is doing everything they can just to keep up. And so, you know, we're seeing a lot of value there for firms of that size, and you know, and we're excited about working with big firms too. But I think small to mid-size is probably the sweet spot right now for us.
Yeah, what I love actually, and you said this at the top of the hour, Dave, about working in small companies. What I love about working with small and medium-sized firms is actually their ability, if they have forward-thinking leadership, to be very agile in adapting their processes and adopting new technologies, like Acelab. I came from Slack, which was acquired by Salesforce. You can't imagine the procurement process we have to go through just to be able to test a new technology. I won't bore you with it, but it gets stopped really, really quickly at the top. So yes, I appreciate the focus on the smaller size firms.
You know, the other thing is that a lot of firms, even small, mid-sized firms, people work remote. So the more remote that people are, you really need collaboration tools and library tools where people can share their information quickly, because you can't just walk over to someone's cube and get that question answered in a second. You know, we don't want to be jumping on a Zoom meeting, you know, every 10 minutes. So if you can just go to a centralized system like an Acelab, like a Slack, where information is available to people and there's quick communication, that makes everyone more productive.
Okay, so we are at about time. So thank you, Dave, so much for your insight today. I learned a lot. I'm hoping all of our guests learned a lot. We have one last question for you, for our audience members, about whether or not you're interested in hearing more about the practice of architecture. Also, we have a great conversation coming up in Practice Disrupted with Dave. So stay tuned to that on the podcast at practicedisrupted.com. And then I think that's really it. The next month series of Designing for Success, we're bringing on Joanne Louie to talk about building not only your firm brand, but building a better brand for the individual, and why it's important to build individuals' brands up within the firm as well. So Dave, any closing thoughts from you?
No, Evelyn, it's been great talking to you today, and I really appreciate everyone's attention and your questions. And look forward to communicating with all of you. And please try Acelab. It's free. We want no barriers for architects to innovate with us. And so, and we'd love to get your feedback on how we can make it a better platform for everyone.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway, honestly, Dave, is hearing somebody with your history in the industry spending so much time and putting so much effort into the next generation of our leaders, and realizing that in order for our industry to grow and change, we all have to change together. So thank you again for highlighting that and for your time today.
All right. Thanks, Evelyn, and thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Bo?
All right. Thanks, everybody.